Guest panelist is a nutrition and health coach with over 15 years as a Food for Life instructor with the PCRM. She's also a recipe contributor, certified in plant-based nutrition from eCornell, and the director and founder of Plant Diego, which is the org part of our event volunteers for the evening. Please help me welcome Tracy Childs. Split your drink. Just don't let it go into my computer. So, the next guest panelist coaches people around the world specializing in physical and emotional healing through fasting and plant-based nutrition. Actually recently completed a 40-day liquid fast.
40 days,
which
wow.
I have questions on.
How are you?
Currently, he is working on releasing a fasting course. I guess my answer's in there. So please help me welcome Pharaoh Kyle. So feel free to stand in front of the table. Here, take this. Tracy. Thank you. Thank you. So I would stand up there. There's a little more floor space to do activity. All right, and this is free flowing. Go ahead. I mean, Tracy, I know you got some questions prepared. Just due to your background, it does make sense to hear some questions from you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Greger. This has been amazing. With all that you found out over the last while writing this book, is there one thing, like simple, or maybe two things that I can tell people, just stick with this part at least. Do that. Obviously they stick with it during the series, and then after that, what can they do? Just at least do this.
If I could boil it down into one tip, it would not weigh. I wouldn't need 4,990 citations. But look, I mean, in terms of if there were just three things to add to your diet. First, as a first step, it would be, greens, healthiest vegetables, berries, healthiest fruits, and legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils. And if there were three things first to remove from your diet, before anything else, it would be anything with trans fats, which thankfully have been banned from the food supply, so partially hydrogenated oils. Processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, sausage. These are category 1 carcinogens, etc. Although cancer does get you to lose weight, but not the best way to go. Chemo, I tell you, just pounds come right off. And then soda, liquid candy. That would be the three things I'd remove from people's diet, just as the first little step.
All right, so add 3 and take 3 out.
Well, yeah, that would be good. I mean, but yeah, so if there was one thing, the wall off your calories concept, I think is right, whole intact plant foods.
Yeah.
That's where you should get your nutrition from.
Simple. I wish it was that simple for everyone, but there's that conditioning. Okay. A lot of people just really wonder. Now we have some really great documentaries out, and obviously you're featured in a lot of them. What's your favorite?
Game Changers! Who saw Game Changers? Woo! That was an easy one. There's just there's just no competition. Yeah. And it was really just the Hollywood production value. It's just it's like if the Forks Over Knives people had tens of millions of dollars, or they could have done it, but it's just they had money,
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, of course, is that ex-person in their life, whoever it is, usually their spouse, who's not on board. And it ends up being a major roadblock. Do you have any good advice for those people?
There's a divorce attorney that... So one thing, I think it can be hard, I think it's particularly common. There's two things you can do. One is you can try to impress upon them that it's coming from a place of love. The only reason I want you to eat this way is because I want you around for a long time, right? If I ever start slipping you some steak, then things aren't so great at home, right? You're doing it because you love them. And so coming from that kind of place, rather than kind of a scolding kind of place, it's no, I just want you to be around because I love you so much. So that would be the first. And then offering kind of third-party information. Instead of coming from someone close to you, you say, well, here's a book, here's a documentary, here's a website. I can't think of any websites, but just to share. And then, they can go at their own pace, and they can, I don't know, then it's a little more, you see that in commercials a lot. The corporate world likes to sell us stuff by us overhearing two people talk about how great a product is. See, it's not the company telling you, it's just like regular people, like, wow. Yeah.
That's great advice. Definitely. Thank you. What's the best food to increase the diversity of your microbiome?
So it would be, microbiome are good gut bugs, the trillions of good gut bugs. And then we used to think that was just had to do with intestinal health. So irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel syndrome, bowel regularity. But now we know these are good gut bugs play a role in our immunity, even our psychology, and we can prove this by doing these so-called fecal transplant studies, where you can take, gut bugs from a depressed person and put it into another person. You can drop their mood, or you can put it from a thin person to a fat person. They lose all this weight, vice versa. It's actually remarkable the effect our gut bugs can have throughout our system, and so we want to foster their growth. And how do we do that? We do that with prebiotics. We do that with fiber-resistant starch, again found in two places: legumes and whole intact grains. And so in the book I talk about this prebiotic mix that I make for my personal gut bugs. We have a nice relationship. And so it's purple barley, which unfortunately I can't find locally. I have to buy online. Oat groats, so it's like steel-cut oats before they cut them, so uncut steel-cut oats. So uncut oats, oat groats. Rye berries, which are the rye groats, essentially, and then black lentils, or little beluga lentils. Okay, so that's what the book says. But since then, the book, I got finished months ago, and then I discovered sorghum, whose starch is poorly absorbed, and so it's considered a low-quality grain. They feed it to livestock, but inadequately absorbed in our small intestine means it gets all the way down. It delivers all this wonderful starch down to our colon, and our good gut bugs can thrive on it. And then there's a type of millet called finger millet, which is probably the healthiest of the millets. I didn't know this, but millet is actually not a thing. Millet is not a grain. Millet describes any small grain. What you think is millet is what's called pearl millet, but there's like 50 types of millet. Teff is considered millet. There's finger millet, foxtail millet, brown. It goes on and on. The healthiest, probably finger millet, has a little gritty texture. It's very small, like amaranth, but boy, is it good for your gut bugs. And so now, I've added those two as well. You throw them all together in any ratio you want, and you dump it 2-to-1 water in an Instant Pot or any kind of electric pressure cooker. 20 minutes, boom. Then you can freeze portions, whatever. And so you can use it like rice, use it like anything, put anything you want on it, use it like oatmeal, whatever. And your gut bugs, you will have, you got to like watch that you don't clog up your plumbing. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. No, because most of a stool is actually pure bacteria. We think it's like undigested food. No, more than 50% is pure, trillions and trillions of bacteria, and so that's how, But that's just be fruitful and multiply. That's the signal you're giving. And they're just churning out these short-chain fatty acids, which do all sorts of wonderful things. They decrease inflammation. That's why you eat fiber-rich foods, and your asthma gets better. Randomize people to fiber-rich foods. Asthma gets better because short-chain fatty acids go up and turn down those inflammatory cells in your lungs. Amazing stuff. So, my prebiotic mix would be that's the one, like, it'll make, that's what you can call it. So it was originally brole, so barley, rye, oats, but now it's like brolums, whatever. Any better acronyms?
Gregor mix.
The Gregor mix.
notes, put it online. I'm just saying. No, I'll do that. Never mind. Okay. So I've studied and just been fascinated with leptin. So that's the hormone, the satiating hormone, right?
Yep.
So that's what makes your brain think you're full. From what I've heard, it's blocked in people that are obese and addicted to food a lot of times. And what does that? Do you know what blocks?
We do. I got a whole leptin chapter. So this is fascinating. So there's a famous series of experiments, probably couldn't be done today because they're unethical, in a Vermont prison. They took prisoners and offered them shorter sentences if they would be part of their experiment. And the experiment was experimental obesity. They wanted them to gain 25 pounds. So they gave them 10,000 calories a day. So they gain pounds. They just want to see, because we always do weight loss studies, but it's like, well, this is like the opposite. Okay. So, what turned out, the number one takeaway, there's a lot of interesting takeaways, but the first takeaway from the studies is that it was very difficult to get them to gain weight. So they tried to feed them 10,000 calories a day, and they started puking up breakfast, like they just couldn't handle it. And so it was actually very difficult to get them, and most of them actually didn't reach it. And then as soon as this experiment stopped, they lost all the weight and went back down to the skinny selves. They all started out skinny. And it suggested that the body had some kind of, thermostat, kind of fat thermostat. And we discovered that it's indeed leptin. There's leptin, there's this a compound produced by your fat cells that finds its way up into your brain. And so if you have a lot of fat cells, you have a lot of leptin. You have few fat cells, you have a little leptin because it's made by each one of your fat cells. And so as soon as the leptin level gets to a certain height, it tells your brain, a certain part of your brain, to stop eating, to lose your appetite and come back down to normal. And that's what was happening in these cases. And so wait a second, why is there an obesity epidemic? How can anyone get fat if leptin does what it does? And that's because of leptin resistance, meaning that your brain is not responding to leptin like it should. And the question is, okay, what causes leptin resistance? And what causes leptin resistance is brain damage caused by saturated fat intake, which is meat, dairy, and processed junk, essentially. But you can show this experimentally in all sorts of ways. Even a single meal high in saturated fat can cause problems. And so it causes inflammation in exactly the part of the brain that regulates it, and then your brain doesn't listen to leptin anymore, and you can get fatter.
Lovely. Now over to Kyle.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, I have a couple questions. I'll make it quick. So the first question actually comes from a mother. I told her I would ask you a question.
All right.
The first one she said is at the age of...
Hi, Mom!
Yes, hi, Mom. At the age of 60, and for people who are getting older, eating a vegan diet, what can be done to help with muscle loss and to prevent it in the future, as well as tips to lose weight in trouble areas like your stomach and waistline?
Yeah, so there's a condition called sarcopenia, which is we naturally lose muscle mass as we get older. And that can play a role in frailty and falls and all sorts of things. And the most important thing we can do is exercise. That's what right. No, so weight-bearing exercise. We need to do resistance exercise. That can be bands, that can be weights, whatever it takes. But it's use it or lose it. Yeah. And it's like when if you ever had an arm in a cast or something for a couple of weeks and you're just not moving that arm and your muscles just shrink up. Your body is not stupid. It's like, why waste any energy making a muscle if you're not going to use it? So I got other things to do with that energy and the protein and I'm not And the same thing with your bones, by the way. Another thing, obviously, that can strike older people. In space, astronauts lose as much as 3% of their entire skeletal mass every month because they're floating around and their body's like, why am I making a skeleton if you're not going to use it? And it just eats away your bones because it's like, And so weight-bearing exercise, same thing, to keep your entire musculoskeletal system intact. We were built to move. I mean, that's, if you think back, our whole evolutionary history, that's all we did was move all day. They didn't have chairs, they didn't have, all right. So, when I have these recommendations, we should exercise 90 minutes a day, and it's like 90 minutes a day, anyway, all right.
All right, moving on to the next one. So I speak with a lot of people who are concerned with losing muscle mass or losing their gains in the gym, or on the flip side, they're plant-based and they want to gain size. And as you know, everyone who feels like they're educated or have any type of education on either weight loss or gaining weight, they always refer to the 3,500 calorie rule.
Oh, yeah.
And I was really excited and surprised to see in your book, though, that you said the 3,500 calorie rule is wrong.
Bunk!
Yes. So
it's bunk!
It's debunked, yes. So can you explain what that is?
Yeah, fascinating, yeah.
And then why is it not everything is claimed to be?
Yeah, so the 3,500 calorie rule, which I was taught in medical school, is you want to lose a pound of fat. Well, pound of fat has 3,500 calories, and so you got to burn. So if you exercise, so if you restrict 3,500 calories from your diet, you lose a pound of fat. Or if you exercise 3,500 calories, you lose a pound of fat. And so that's how they came up with this, cut you 500 calories out of your daily diet, 500 times 7, you'll lose a pound a week. 500 calories down, lose a pound a week. And so that's conventional wisdom. It's so easy to realize why it's wrong. So I have illustrations and videos I did about it. Well, if you lost a pound in 2 years, you'd be negative whatever pounds. It doesn't make sense that you just lose. Okay. So what happens is, and then this is kind of simple physics, is it takes less energy to move around a lighter body. Just like a little car takes less fuel than a Hummer. Think about, so if you have 50 pounds of extra body fat, that's like the skinny person inside you carrying a 50-pound backpack wherever they go, up the stairs, 50-pound backpack, down the stairs, everywhere, all day long, you got this 50-pound backpack. And it takes a lot of energy to move that. So that's why it's not a straight line up or down, but it plateaus out, because you lose, as soon as you lose weight, then you need less calories to exist. And so that's why it plateaus out either way. And so we need a new rule to take that into account. And it turns out that, so it's actually 55 calories per pound of kind of permanent weight loss, but you don't get that immediately. That's after 3 years. You get about half of that within the first year or so, but then it plateaus out. So that's how you can calculate. If I want to lose this many pounds, it's 55 calories a day of restriction to lose a pound over time. But that's if you're portion controlling. That's if you're eating the same food in smaller quantities, because your appetite ramps up. If you eat healthier food, it's only 10 calories per pound of weight loss. And so that's more impetus for us to actually improve the quality of our diets rather than restricting quantity.
Amazing. And I'm gonna ask you one more. So in this section on fasting, which I loved, you open up by saying fasting has been branded as the next big weight loss fad, but actually has a long history throughout various spiritual traditions practiced by Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha. And in 1732, a noted physician wrote that he who eats till he is sick must fast till he is well. So in light of that, can you, instead of speaking on the weight loss or outside of the weight loss benefits of fasting, what other physical benefits are there to fasting?
Yeah, so I have a whole, for anyone who's familiar, I did 3 webinars, three-hour webinars on fasting. One fasting for weight loss, intermittent fasting, one fasting for chronic disease treatment, and one fasting strictly for cancer. We just did fasting for cancer. Those videos will be trickling out over the next few years. You can get the whole, there's like a 3 DVD set or something with all the webinars. If you want them immediately. And so, I went through every single, so there's only like 1,500 articles or something, period, on all of fasting in the English language medical literature. So I was like, okay, I'll just read all 1,500, and here's everything that is. And so, so beneficial for kickstarting blood pressure control, for example. A lot of this was done here in California at True North Clinic, up near in Santa Rosa, California. And the remarkable cases of lymphomas, these grapefruit-sized tumors just melting away, and now these people are years out cancer-free. Really remarkable. Autoimmune diseases, right? Inflammation, right? I mean, when your body is in starvation mode, it has a list of priorities, and it says, well, look, yeah, inflammation, yeah, I want to be inflamed, but that's for another day. That's when we got food. We can waste energy than just like randomly inflaming you. So rheumatoid arthritis, or some of the classic ankylosing spondylitis, things that were remarkable. So basically, a long story, God, you can go through all these, but fasting is useless if you go back on the same diet that caused all your problems in the first place, right? Fasting, by definition, is unsustainable. And so it's used as a way to kind of kickstart your system to then transition to a whole food plant-based diet. So, for example, if you go to a whole food plant-based diet, your blood pressures would come down to perfectly normal. But you can do that in 5 days on a fast, and then start a whole food plant-based diet. So you just kind of like, instead of taking a month, it took 5 days, fine. But what matters is the post-fast, and people, it's like psychological. All of a sudden, look, I mean, if you have been eating, cheeseburgers and milkshakes your whole life, and you just can't go to kale and quinoa overnight, because it doesn't taste very good. Everything tastes good after not eating nothing for weeks. Everything tastes good, right? I mean, it's just like anything, right? And so, I mean, so so your taste buds change, and people find it easier as a way, kind of a psychological trick to get people on certain things. The important thing I would say, though, as a caveat, we should never be fasting more than a few days without medical supervision, and that's because normally your kidneys go into sodium conservation mode as soon as you stop eating. I mean, so salt is an essential nutrient. Most of us get too much of it. But as soon as we stop eating it, our kidneys, which normally pee out salt all the day, they're like, oh God, did you just eat French fries? Oh God, okay. And it's like getting rid of sodium, and all of a sudden you stop eating, period. You're just drinking water. And then the kidneys are like, wait a second, and so you stop losing sodium, and it retains all the sodium in your body, so you don't die. But some people, their kidneys don't do that. They fast, and their kidneys don't get the signal, and you keep losing sodium. And then your sodium levels in your brain go down, and you experience vague symptoms like, I feel a little dizzy, I feel a little headachy, like standard fasting kind of symptoms, and then comatose and dead. Comatose and dead from hyponatremia, inadequate sodium intake. How do you know? Because you're under medical supervision. They're testing your urine. They're doing blood tests. Make sure your electrolytes are okay. Should be totally fine. But you don't know if your kidneys are smart or not, right? So that's why, so it's not just like legalese to be like, yeah, make sure a doctor, No, you want to make sure that things go according to plan. Now, it's extraordinarily safe if things go to plan. But if they don't, you got to stop immediately, and refeeding is a critical period. Anyway, we go on. Good stuff. Very, very fascinating literature, and got lots of good videos on it.
Beautiful. All right, I got a couple bones to pick, and then we are going to open up to audience Q&A. Dr. Greger. Maybe the most important thing you'll be asked all night. Can you read a forest plot?
Yes, I can, actually.
So I'm so glad you know what I'm talking about. I will assume that a lot of the people in here might not. I'll refresh. There's a guy. His name's Joe Rogan. He runs a podcast. It's popular. I wish we had a marker for you. So on and this is all a big, long question for you, Dr. Greger.
Yeah.
Is on this podcast, actually about a month ago, Joe Rogan decided to christen the launch of the Game Changers movie with an episode with one of his nutritional expert friends, and they debunked the Game Changers for 3 hours. 1 week later, they had on Joe Rogan's podcast that same nutritional expert and James Wilks. And for over 3 hours, almost 4 hours, James Wilks systematically reversed all of the quote-unquote debunkings and just squashed Chris Kresser. It was so amazing. I was so thrilled during that entire talk because James is amazing. Did you get to work with him hands-on?
I was a science advisor for Game Changers.
So you talked to him a few times?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, he had a few flavors of you, but he just, every single thing that they objected to, he proved the guy was either misleading or lying or uneducated. In the forest plot, this nutritional expert doesn't even know how to read a graph. And I just want to hear what you have to say about these types of voices out there. People that have big platforms, maybe a big title, maybe not, but a big audience. And they are claiming things that are completely false, not just bro science, maybe completely misleading. And what types of things are you seeing out there? And what is that, what are people to do? And what do you think about the phonies out there?
Stick to the science. Right, and look, it doesn't matter who's saying it. In fact, having an MD after your name is basically an anti-credential when it comes to nutrition, right? And basically, you are advertising to the world that you were taught nothing about the subject. You have no idea what you're talking about, and that the sum of your nutrition knowledge was gained through checkout aisle magazines. Basically, that's your. Even those who are, supposedly educated are educated with, National Dairy Council propaganda. The most important thing, in fact, the only important thing, particularly when it comes to something as life and death important as what to eat, and what to feed your family, is what does the best available balance of evidence show? And you just got to look at the science. And look, anyone can look at the science from any background. That's the nice thing about science. It's true whether you like it or not. And so that's.
What about that debate? What do you think about that debate? Did you watch it all?
I did watch it, yeah. And it's so, I had never heard of Joe Rogan in my life, just because he's never written a peer-reviewed science. So I don't know. I don't know anybody. That's why, people give me pop culture references. I'm like, I don't know. Someone was just like, you've never seen Dirty Dancing? I'm like, what's that?
So,
I'm all for hand sanitizing. Is that something?
Thank you. It was such a good reverse debate that Joe made a post on his Instagram saying, vegans, this is a big win for you, is what he said in the caption. Also saying that he was thinking of removing the original video just because it was so all bogus. He's yet to do so, but he said it. So, Dr. Greger, obviously you were born Michael Greger, but at some point you decided / maybe became Michael Greger, Dr. Michael Greger. We'll leave out the MD that you just dissed.
Yes.
What do you think about that? When you have MD behind your name in so many places, but it's.
Well, that's not why I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
In fact, don't listen to me. Listen to the science. I said that all right. Don't listen to me. Look, I'm just showing you the science. That's the whole point of Nutrition Fact. Here's the science. Here's the paper. Here's all the links. You can download the PDF yourself. Read it yourself. Here's the vote in context. There it is. Right? None of us were born with this knowledge. And so you have a right to ask, well, where did you come up? So someone says, eat eggs, don't eat eggs. You say, well, where did you get that knowledge from? Was it just on some blog? Was it from the United Egg Producers? Was it, or was it decent science? And so you have a right to know, because we're not talking about, we're not talking about a a toaster review on Amazon, right? You go on, you want to buy a toaster. The random thoughts of total strangers may be totally useful for you, right? It's like, this is a great toaster, and you're like, wow, thank you for, but when it comes to something literally life and death important, like there's anything that we actually want to demand evidence for, it's something that could actually affect our health and well-being. But, when I had a clinical practice, when someone would say, and I talk about their diet, and they're like, I eat X, Y, and Z. I say, okay, well, why do you eat that way? Oh, well, some guy at the gym told me to. I'm like, some guy at the gym told you? I'm like, what is that? It's like, yeah, some guy at the gym told me I should just start taking cephalosporin. So I was like, all right, I'll go down. What? That doesn't make it, the number one cause of death in these United States is the American diet. According to the Global Burden Disease Study, largest study of disease risk factors, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Cigarettes are number 2, kill 500,000 Americans every year. Our diet kills more. So it's like the most important decision we make about our health is what's at the end of the fork. And so that's the one thing we should actually have some evidence for, and put some thought into. And so that's what I do.
Beautiful.
What I do.
Oddly enough, on Amazon, there are a lot of paid-for reviews anyhow.
It's true.
So, what's it like to be such a YouTube sensation nowadays? You're becoming a household name, whether it's you or nutritionfacts.org. You're not one to, vlog or anything like that, and you do kind of just do nutrition facts. You're not really building much intentionally outside of it, but when you're meeting people in the street or people see you in restaurants and stuff, what's it like, first off, with your growing fame, and then also tie in, he's popular, and also tie in, what types of stories are people sharing with you most about what's changing for them and their families?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not so much, so I walk into a restaurant and it's not until I open my mouth and say something. But all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, a table for 2, but all of a sudden they're like, I know that voice. And you just see all the heads turning. No, that's cool. No, it's not. No, I have had TSA agents who are going through my stuff and they're like, wait a second, aren't you? Oh, just go. Nice. Right? Just random,
Controlled style?
Yeah. And so I was able to sneak it on them.
Yeah. Get those oranges across the border.
I know. Yeah. It's not easy. No, but it's beautiful. This is so I'm on a 3-year book cycle where 1 year I write a book, the next year I go travel around the country or the world and speak about it. And share it. And then the third year, I write 3 years worth of nutrition facts videos so the site doesn't go dead while I'm doing while I'm writing the next book. Right. And those are, writing this last book it was the kind of the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah. God. And it's all you're like a hermit, and I felt like the Unabomber in a cabin. Total.
You and your treadmill.
You have total concentration. You have to shut everything out and immerse because there's 200 studies. They all show different things on the same thing. What is going on? There's 101 every hour. Okay, great. I go to sleep. I'm 500 behind. It's quick. Theoretically, while I'm working those crazy hours, I know I'm helping people, but it's the years where I get to come out and actually see people, and that's where all the love flows back, and I realize the impact. And that's what makes all the other long years, totally worth. I just it's just so rewarding to actually, feel the love in hug form, not just kind of, it's a beautiful thing.
Last question before we open it up to the audience is, it's always been hard for me to understand and envision what the percentages are and what they mean. When you hear some sort of study along the lines of 1 serving of processed meat per day raises the risk of diabetes as much as 51%. Like, I know that this is simplified and probably very wrong, but like if you had 10 people up here, does that mean that half of them are, like, how do you split up the percentage when you hear studies? Like how can a normal person understand what that actually means?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that we're doing new is these webinars, because I'm literally writing like hundreds of videos, but they only come out in a couple of weeks, right? And so, but because I have to write them all because I got to do the next book, and so there's all this amazing material I want to get out as soon as possible. So we do these live webinars. So we have one coming up, I think we just announced it next month. Oh, yeah, and then February is going to be a really interesting one too, on why vegetarians have higher stroke risk. Why is that, and what can we do about it? But one of the webinars that is on my list is how to read a research paper, and I'll be talking about absolute risk and relative risk. So what that means is whatever risk of diabetes you have, it's 50% higher. So obviously if it's a rare disease, it doesn't mean as much as it's a very common disease, but diabetes is a common disease. And so the classic, what you'll hear a lot with the category 1 carcinogen processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, increases your risk. So every 50-gram portion, so that's like 1 breakfast link or a small hot dog, something like that, once a day, increases your risk of colorectal cancer, which is number 2 cancer killer in this country, second only to lung cancer. Increases your risk 18%. Okay, so what does that mean? So it means whatever risk you had, it's 18% higher.
Got it.
But that means, but then you're like, well, how many people? Like, what are my odds of getting it? And probably the easiest way to think about it is it's almost exactly the amount of risk you get increased of lung cancer living with a smoking spouse. Being exposed to secondhand smoke day in, day out, because the person you live with is smoking, your increased risk of lung cancer
20% or something?
is about 17%. So it's actually a little less than the processed meat. Wow. So that just gives you a sense of it's as bad. So we do our best not to smoke around our kids. Why would we send them to school with a bologna sandwich?
My goodness, lovely. And a question is a short series of words that ends in a question mark that can be answered from the stage. So anyone that does any big pitches or something like that, the entire audience will start to slowly boo you. All right. So if there's feedback, I don't know. So it should be good. Is that working? Oh, yeah, look at that. Start on this side.
Hi, Dr. Greger, how are you?
Good.
And everyone, please be respectful.
I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the FDA has removed restrictions on cholesterol values, and I'm wondering why.
You mean dietary cholesterol?
Yeah, dietary cholesterol restrictions have been removed. Why?
So the USDA and Health and Human Services, in the dietary guidelines, in the last dietary guidelines for Americans, which happens every 5 years, they had proposed, the scientific advisory body had proposed removing the 300 milligram a day limit on dietary cholesterol. And based on some faulty reasoning, based on the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology report that came out saying there's nothing new on dietary cholesterol, but this was just the last kind of 10 years. And they took that to mean that there's no link between dietary. Anyway, so the president of the American College of Cardiology called them up and actually wrote a nasty letter to them, which was published, and said, you don't know what you're talking about, dietary cholesterol is horrible. And so when the actual dietary guidelines came out, it strengthened it. Not only did it say, so it said, eat as little cholesterol as possible, there's no safe level, we should follow the Institute of Medicine, the most prestigious medical body in the country, as little cholesterol as possible, and there's only one way to do that, and that's a strictly plant-based diet.
Yes.
Anyway. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Greger.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here and for doing
Sure.
what you do.
I like your shirt.
Thank you very much. It says death in my metal, not in my meals. So one question I've been having is I've been seeing a lot of recipes on air fried foods.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to know, air fried foods, kind of like what's your take on them? Are they okay for like weekly, daily consumption? Are they still carcinogenic like oil fried foods, maybe to a lesser extent?
Okay, so there are two types. So there's a bunch of compounds created with high dry heat. So we're not talking about steaming, boiling, poaching, that kind of thing, but baking, grilling, barbecuing, where the temperatures can get above the 212 or 100 degrees Celsius. And so one of which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which comes from basically animal fat splattering. It's a combustion byproduct. And so you don't have to worry about that with plant foods. Another one is heterocyclic amines, which is actually created when the muscle protein and creatine in the muscle itself is exposed to high heat. So again, if you're not eating mussels, you don't have to worry about that. That's something you have to worry about if you're eating chicken or fish or something at those high temperatures. But then there's two others. So one's called acrylamide, and that's when the kind of crispy carbohydrates, potato chips, French fries, and there was concern that was cancer causing. But those concerns, and so I raised that as soon as it came out, and I said, look, until we know further, stop eating potato chips and French fries, which aren't healthy for you anyway. But those concerns have almost completely vanished, except maybe for endometrial cancer. But all the other cancers which we were concerned about don't seem to be the case, and so the case against acrylamide appears to be weakening year by year. But then there's one more, and that's advanced glycation end products, these so-called glycotoxins, which are formed when high fat and high protein foods are exposed to high temperatures. And so number one is like broiled hot dogs, and then like chicken McNuggets. I have a video where the top 20 sources, all of them are some form of animal product. But you take an apple and there's almost nothing. You bake the apple, almost nothing. Doesn't matter because that's not a high fat, high protein food. However, there are a few high fat, high protein plant foods. Tofu, right? We should not be eating grilled tofu, Cajun blackened tofu every day because of these. The saddest thing is nuts and seeds. High protein, high fat foods. And what do? We toast our walnuts, we toast our sesame seeds because they taste so good that way, but not a good idea. So, how not to die, I told people to toast their walnuts, but that's before we had this data, and now that's one of the things that I regret talking about. That's why I like videos where I can change the video, but it's hard to change the book. I mean, we did change the book, later editions, but so we should eat raw nuts, raw seeds, raw nut butters, raw seed butters, because of glycotoxins. And so, for example, there's a company, have you ever heard of these Baru nuts? Barukas, right, that's the brand name is Barukas. You can get these new nuts, which actually aren't technically nuts, but the problem is, and the company wanted me to do a video about it, so send me a free bag of nuts. And I'm like, okay, you really want me to do a video about it? Because you may not like what it says. I mean, I'll do a video about it, but I'm just going to say what the science says. And unfortunately, you have to roast the nuts because it has a trypsin inhibitor. It has basically something toxic in it that you have to roast, and then it's completely harmless. But you cannot get raw Baruka nuts. And so I say in the video, which won't be out for like another 2 years or something, but I say, sorry, because you can't get raw, I would suggest eating some other kind of nuts. So, bottom line, so that's the one thing we're worried about with air frying. It would be high fat, high protein foods. So, tempeh wings, oh, yummy. I dip a little cornmeal, a little ground flaxseed. Okay, not a good idea. But sweet potato fries, booyah! So, I have an air fryer, and I have it for one purpose. Purple sweet potato fries, one of my favorite snacks in the whole wide world. Little sage. Oh, my God. And then you just have to worry about high sodium ketchup. Okay. All right.
All right, I know you have to cut it somewhere, so I do apologize. But instead of cutting it after you, we're going to do 2 more questions, but Dr. Greger's going to do a rapid fire answer.
Oh, yeah, right. Good luck with that.
All right, 2 more, and if you're still standing in line behind these, yeah, I'm sorry, but we can't take you tonight.
This won't be too bad.
Okay.
When it comes to a whole foods plant-based weight loss diet and research pointing to low fat, do avocados and nuts and seeds fit into that? And if so, in what quantities?
Oh, that's a great question. So I have kind of sections on both in the book because I knew that question would come up. Nuts are one of 2 foods for which those single foods associated with adding years to your life. There's only 2 foods. Now there's food patterns like whole food plant-based diet, vegetarian diets, vegan diets that are associated with adding years to your lifespan. But just 2 individual foods. One is dark green leafy vegetables and the other one's nuts. So it's critical to include an ounce of nuts, which is a palmful of nuts every day. It's part of my daily dozen. And I explain why in the weight loss book, even though they're high in calorie density, they don't contribute to weight gain as much as you think, unless you eat them as nut butters, right? So we should eat intact because even no matter how well you chew your nuts, there's little bits of nuts that go all the way through you, encapsulated, all their calories, provide all these wonderful things to your gut bugs, but don't provide calories, blah, blah, blah. So chew our nuts and raw, ideally, rather than nut butter. So the difference between how not to die and how not to diet, how not to die says eat almond butter, and how not to diet says eat almonds.
Avocados?
Oh, and avocados are not low in calorie density, but lower in calorie density than almost everything else anyone eats, so eat your avocados.
What is your take on Dr. Sebi and eating an alkaline diet and spring water versus alkaline water versus filtered alkaline water?
Okay, so alkaline water is a scam. And I think I even have a video. Alkaline water, scam or not? Spoiler alert, scam. Okay. But the alkaline diet, it's so interesting. The alkaline diet, so basically the alkaline diet says we should eat alkaline formed foods, not acid forming foods. What are acid forming foods? Refined grains, meat, dairy, eggs, and what is the most alkaline food in the world? Dark green leafy vegetables. Eat lots of fruit, alkaline foods. Okay, so they are coming out and saying, eat lots of greens, don't eat animal products. Awesome advice, but they're doing it with a biologically, physiologically faulty mechanism. They think that you eat alkaline foods and it actually changes the pH of your blood. The only time the pH of your actual blood changes is in the ICU. You do a little blood gas and the pH changes means you're about to die. You live within an extremely narrow range of pH or you're dead, but what does change is the pH of your urine. You eat alkaline foods, your pee turns alkaline, you eat acidic foods. These are acid-forming foods. They don't actually make your body acidic. They make your pee acidic. And so it does reduce your risk of kidney stones. There's a few other things it does. I have videos about it. But I love the advice that they give. Eat lots of greens. Don't eat animal products. But so if someone said, I have my tinfoil hat picked up signals from Mars that said eat greens and don't eat animal products, I'd be like, awesome, but not for that reason. So I encourage people, so I have a video on best ways to filter water. The concern of these chlorination byproducts, because we have kind of a crappy system in this country, unlike in some places in Europe, we basically have the schmutz in the water. And so and the chlorine that we add to it, these chlorinated compounds, interact with the schmutz and create these chlorination byproducts, which can be removed with a plain carbon filter, like Brita, Pure, whatever. And it turns out Brita's the worst. Pure did better. Zero water did better, but it's like 4 times expensive. I got a video, it goes through all the things. Check it out. And I go through refrigerator filters and all that stuff, the best ones put to the test, blah, blah, blah. All right.
All right. Can I please get the volunteers of the event up to line the stage really quick. If you're a volunteer, please come up here. We want to recognize you for helping get people to their seats, creating a good environment, dishing out the drinks. And on behalf of all of us, one moment. We got Dr. Greger a bouquet. Don't panic, it's organic.
Nice.
And so, Dr. Greger, we all thank you so much for making the trek across America, doing the stuff you do globally, and just all the benefits that you have brought to our lives. Oh, let's take a picture. That sounds good. Okay. And so this does conclude the event.
Go sideways.
The line for book signings is obviously against this wall. No cutsies. We'll get everyone quickly. Thank you all so much. Give yourselves a round of applause for putting your family, your health, your future first. One more. Thank you, and good night.
Mix and match. I saw these tickets. What are you doing? All right. Dr. Greger, will you do the honors?
Oh, yeah.
Pull on that lucky little boletos. Boletos?
Boletos.
Boletos. All right, it's ready.
Not the psychic one.